Hi, I'm Shlomi Ron. I'm the CEO of the Visual Storytelling Institute, and we are a think tank based here in sunny Miami, Florida. And we're all about bringing the gospel of visual storytelling from the world of art into marketing. So we do it by helping brands better connect with their audiences through the power of visual storytelling. We provide consulting, training, and thought leadership like this podcast we're in right now. So if you want to learn more, check out visualstorytell.com. Today, I'm a little bit excited because the topic of today is something that we've all been reading and seeing in the news about the rise in branded entertainment. And this is all kind of part of a much bigger movement of young consumers, Gen Zs and even millennials that pretty much got sick of looking at ads and really looking for something deeper with much more empathy and something that talks about their pains and their worldviews. So we've seen, this whole trend of brands kind of transitioning from a traditional interruption marketing ads, salesy material to more kind of engaging entertainment products like films, TV shows, and so forth. So to talk about what this is all about, what is branded entertainment and why brands should care and really jump on this exciting bandwagon, I invited Chris Stefanik. He's the head of visual storytelling at Wattpad. And I'm really excited about this because Wattpad is really a leading social storytelling. And if you can imagine an audience of over 90 million users, super creative Gen Z folks that are writing long form novels and stories. And Chris working with brands to basically translate their brand ideas into filmed entertainment based on those stories. So I thought this is an amazing way to bring visual storytelling into new audiences in a very original way from grassroots, content that young creators are making. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Shlomi. Yeah, and the title is Head of Global Brand Partnerships at Wattpad.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, perfect. Great. So before we jump right in, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your backstory. What was your kind of wow moment that made you get into the marketing and then later into branded entertainment?
Yeah, happy to. So, started my career in management consulting for a number of years, doing a lot of digital strategy work, which was a great place to kind of kickstart, but was always very passionate about technology, how technology was shaping kind of consumer behavior and digital communities. And so ultimately did a few different digital kind of startups and a digital kind of a stint at a digital media company in Toronto. Eventually ended up at Wattpad. Actually, today is my 8th year anniversary at Wattpad on the exact day. Thank you. Yeah, so it's been quite some time here, and so I joined when we were about 35 people or so.
Yeah,
weren't really generating a ton of revenue, and really was brought on to figure out monetization with a really small group of folks. So we tested a bunch of models, eventually landed on at that time what we were calling native advertising, and actually did our first project with 20th Century Fox for The Fault in Our Stars. When we first ran that program, it was more text-based storytelling. So we actually created stories written by our top writers that were thematically linked to the movie The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh, I see.
The results were amazing, right? What we also did was basically gave the brand 100% share of voice of all of the ads that would sit in between chapters.
Right.
So we knew we were onto something, and so I've continued to kind of scale the ads and partnerships business over the last 8 years. But what we realized over the last 2 years is certainly a change in the overall ecosystem, or really a clear thesis coming to my mind, which is this younger audience is no longer watching linear TV. I mean, heck, millennials were already cord cutters. Gen Z is the next audience. Wattpad is predominantly a Gen Z community. In fact, 1 in 3 Gen Z females are on the platform. They're looking to be entertained in other places like Netflix, like Disney Plus, like Hulu, like TikTok, like Wattpad. So some of those places you can buy your way in, but many of them you can't. Disney Plus, Netflix, you can't just buy ad space there. And so what we're seeing is that there is really a need and a desire for brands to be producing original content to reach this audience in places they normally can't. And so we've seen this really amazing rise in what we call branded entertainment, which is brands producing original content that can ladder up and compete with the likes of content that comes out of Hollywood studios.
That's amazing.
So this is everything from the Lego movie to the Headspace series on Netflix to many things in between. And we'll talk about some specific examples later. And so what Wattpad did was launch Wattpad Brand Originals. And so you did a bit of a quick intro earlier, but Wattpad is a social network of readers and writers, over 90 million monthly users. And we have over 1 billion chapter uploads on the platform. So an infinite amount of stories, literally books that have been serialized and written by our top writers. And we look at the data and essentially determine which of those top stories are appropriate to be adapted into film, series, podcasts. We're taking that model to brands and saying, brands, jump in the producer's chair with us. Let's produce a short film together. Let's produce a podcast together. Let's produce a series together, because this content might ladder up very specifically to your values. And that's kind of the ethos of the work that we're doing.
I see. I know this is exciting. I was actually kind of experimenting and checking out your app, and what kind of struck me that the tremendous engagement you get. You open a story and you see that pretty much on every second line, million people are commenting and engaging. That's kind of amazing, and you can see kind of their anticipation level for what's going to happen next. So, that's definitely a new format for, reading stories, that you actually reading it with other million people with you, basically.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's cool. Before we dive deeper into the process again of how you do it, maybe tell us, like your first view definition for visual storytelling in your mind. You've been in business for 8 years now.
Yeah. So, I mean, visual storytelling broadly is telling a brand narrative through, I would go a little bit further and say through audio or visual tactics. So literally anything from an infographic all the way to a feature film. I think visual storytelling or audiovisual storytelling is quite broad. Where I think there's a bit of confusion or misalignment is the difference between branded content and branded entertainment. Which I think you may have a question about as well. We definitely, first of all, I want to kind of acknowledge the fact that you also include audio into your definition, because a lot of people think it's only visual media formats. And the way, like you, I tell to, try to communicate this any kind of a story you envision in your mind coming to you from an audio podcast or a video, it's serving the same experience in a way. So that's why I think you're absolutely right, including audio. But to your point, I know there's if you look at the evolution of a brand integrated into entertainment content, from the days of product placement, where, I actually used to work for a product placement agency in my day, and I would receive scripts and, with category of different product to integrate. So the story is already made and the brands is kind of an afterthought. So I'm kind of curious how you define branded entertainment, because I think, this is a little bit different. Yeah. So for us, branded entertainment is true original content that is being financed or co-produced, with a brand partner with the purposes of entertaining an individual. Not right. That is objective number one. Of course, there may be some light product integration. And likely a lot of the brand will be wrapped around the whole experience, particularly if you're creating ancillary content or additional spots or content that lives outside of the main film or series that you're doing that will live in other areas across digital or wherever it may be. So you get this larger halo effect around creating, whether or not it's a brand funded film or a brand funded series, but the primary purpose needs to be entertained, because to entertain your audience, because you are competing with all the other forms of entertainment out there. That combine like that versus branded content, which I think is a broad term, which is useful, is like every form of content that a brand is using to get across their kind of critical information or brand values, or brand message, or value proposition. So branded content would include things like infographics, newsletters, like more on the nose, informational podcasts. The list can kind of go on there, right? It's kind of the broad term, and then brand.
But I think the boundary is that it's not going to look like an ad. It's got to be a content that lives on its own merits, pretty much. So that's kind of the distinction between branded content and all the classic advertising, even native advertising, which is closer to branded content. But then there's the switch, and then the brand entertainment, to your point, is even getting narrower because it's focusing on filmed entertainment, which are TV shows, films, and that kind of.
Exactly, right. Almost the difference is to inform versus to entertain.
Right. No, that's definitely making sense in my mind. So when you talk about the program that you lead at Wattpad, like brand originals, can you give us a sense of what the process looks like? National Geographic comes to you and say what?
Yeah. So to take a step back, there are two primary approaches we take when a brand or partner comes to us and wants to create original content. Mm-hmm. One is the first question is whether or not we want to leverage existing IP that is on the platform, or if we want to create new IP. Right? So if a brand is looking to leverage existing IP, we work really closely with Wattpad Webtoon Studios, which is our studios division, and look to find content that is associated or aligned with the brand's values, right? So we may have a story on the platform called Saving Everest, which has really, really specific themes around mental health and teenage mental health challenges. That a story like that could make a lot of sense for a variety of brands all over the world that are investing in very involved in that cause, right? So that's a clear process. Right. The other model is brand comes to us and very specifically wants to create content around a particular theme or topic area. So for example, we had Lionsgate work with us around their movie Wonder, and they wanted to create content that was and short films that were thematically aligned with the movie Wonder, which was the primary theme was kindness. And so then what we do is we put out a writing contest, enable our community of over 90 million monthly users to submit stories. And then we essentially look at all of the data, play back what we think are like the top stories from the contest, and then work with the brand or the studio to select our favorites and then adapt it. And so in that scenario, we adapted three short films.
I see. So that's interesting. So either you kind of leveraging an existing content, integrating maybe a branded extra chapter, or you create net new whole content from scratch. No, this is making a lot of sense. And I actually checked your website earlier, and I saw to your earlier comment about the studios that the other part of the business is you guys operate like any media company that is producing books and influencer marketing management and other pure films to go through the normal distribution channel regarding of any brand. So you reach that point that you're sitting on this golden mine of great creative content that you can actually repurpose in a variety of ways. So that's kind of amazing outside the brand partnership.
Yeah, what makes the model particularly exciting is the fact that we're more or less sitting on the largest online library of original IP in the world, right? I mean, yes, we're a UGC platform, and as mentioned before, over 1 billion chapters have been uploaded on the platform over over the course of our lifetime, or the lifetime of the company. So it basically gives infinite content to work with. But the amazing part is, like, when we are looking to adapt these stories, they all have built-in audiences. So that increases the chance and likelihood of success. Because if we are taking a top story and turning it into a theatrical film, like we did with the series called After,
right,
we go and re-engage that audience once the film is about to be released, encouraging them to go see it in the theaters or go check it out on a particular streamer or OTT. So we already are kind of stacking the odds in our favor that the project is going to be a success, because it's not like this piece of IP is kind of just appearing out of the ether. It's been co-created on the platform with community involvement and people that are heavily invested in the story and the writer and the characters. And so it certainly allows us to have a pretty high hit rate in terms of the projects that come out of our studios division and the projects that are coming out of our brand partnerships group. Yeah,
I think, I'm kind of thinking about this in my mind, that unlike, if somebody is going to work with a publisher or a film studio to launch a new film or a book, you don't know what the audience reaction is going to be. In your case, you have a built-in focus group in a way that validating, that the content is really effective. And I think that's the big difference from the normal route, right? Yeah,
exactly. No, we're fortunate. I mean, the power is in the data, because even through the development process, we can look at the data and say, we want to leave this chapter in, not this chapter, but like chapter 7, paragraph 4, a really important plot twist happened that needs to be a focal point of the film adaptation or the series. So we're able to get to that level of granularity, which very much allows for a very rich development process.
Yeah. So hold on to this thought about analytics. We're going to get back to it, but before, I'd love to see some examples. Maybe you can share of a project you worked on. That'll be fantastic.
So the Lionsgate Wonder example is one that is near and dear to my heart. It was just the perfect example of kind of crowdsourced storytelling, really giving our community the creative freedom to create stories around like a broader theme of kindness that was very much linked to the release of the movie Wonder. Right. So we had 3 short films come out, one of which was called Fuzzy Sparks, which was a story actually from the point of view of a puppy or a dog. Right. And I mean, I won't provide full spoilers. I'm sure we can link to the full version of it, but I'll show the first minute or 2 here.
Okay, great.
So share my screen.
I didn't ask to be born. Yet, here I am, making the best of it. Better than that, making it good. It's not always wonderful experiencing the mud puddles, the loud, angry sounds that seem like too fast and too scary. But life, that fuzzy spark that makes me feel warm and hopeful, that's good. I know it is. I'm still a little wobbly, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm trying my best to make you proud, and I like it when you reach out. Somebody reached out before you did. I thought he was gonna pet my head or scratch my ears. I think he got confused and hit me. But you didn't look confused. You're scratching my ears. I like you. You know, I didn't come from here. I came from somewhere else, and they left me here. And I know I don't look so good, but I will follow you anywhere. I think you're all the things a mud puddle's not. I didn't ask to be born. But if I had a choice, I think I probably would.
Oh, wow. That was really cool. Yeah. Lots of emotion, a lot of empathy. Yeah. This is great.
Yeah, and see, I played the whole thing, and for the folks that watch or listen to this, I imagine most probably felt something through that video or that short film, and that really is the power of true narrative-based emotional storytelling, right? As you put people into a different headspace, and
Right.
the hope is then at the end when you see the teaser for the movie, you've watched thematic content, you're excited to see another great, amazing, longer form, movie around the theme of kindness.
Right.
So yeah, we're really, really proud of that work, and are excited to do more of it.
Yep. Yep. And you have examples of where you actually, like you work with a company that maybe in the CPG space or that wanted to feature their brand narrative in a engaging. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the Philippines, we did some work with Unilever and Cornetto,
Mm-hmm.
and basically this was in the Philippines, and we used one of our top writers there
Mm-hmm.
to essentially create a net new story. So it was new IP, which was kind of a rom-com style story, and it very much had this community engagement model where
Mm-hmm.
the writer would create a chapter, basically inform her audience that it could go down path A or path B, have the community comment and let her know which path that they prefer the writer to take. She'd then write chapter 2, same approach, and that turned into like an eight part I think it was actually a 10 chapter story. It did so well and had so much engagement on the platform that we worked with Unilever and their media agency Mindshare to actually have the story produced into a feature film. So the feature film was then produced and distributed by Viva Films, ended up doing very, very well in the box office.
Right.
Incredibly successful release, ROI positive for the brand, and also won some great awards, a gold medal at the Asia Pacific Media Festival.
Oh, wow.
So again, amazing execution, true crowdsourced kind of storytelling.
Right.
The community was brought along through the journey, and then they came out and showed up and watched the movie, as did many other folks. And in that scenario, there was like some very light product integration of the ice cream into the story and the movie.
Got it. But the brand was involved from day one in the creation, as opposed to coming later. Which is the case of product placement.
It was in the original story, right? So it wasn't jarring to see it on the big screen.
I see. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering, there's a debate in the sponsored film space that talks about the kind of the two options that brands are faced with. On one hand, they can create like a short film with branded content in it. But then again, they need to buy, maybe fourth time its cost in media in order for it to get exposure. And then they get clicks and likes. Versus the other format, like if you look at Patagonia Films and Johnson & Johnson, the 5B that we've talked about, that actually taken the long form and they actually get disputed in the traditional approach, first in film festivals, then get bought by streaming services. So the media component here is not playing a role because once it's sold, the buyer is actually taking care of it. And in most cases, they even get a return of the investment.
Yeah, so it all comes back to what the goals and objectives and the KPIs of the client are, right? If a certain brand is looking to generate positive ROI, then that changes the scope of the conversation, and that's never guaranteed.
Right.
If the goal is to tell a very important story and message and maximize reach and awareness of that message, again, slightly different conversation. If the goal is to maximize engagement in a particular theme and a particular piece of content, so that laddering up and having answers to those questions is really step one, because then it determines, are you going to distribute this on your own and operated channels? Are you going to look to sell it to a streamer or another more traditional partner? Are you going to make it available across multiple channels?
I see.
So it really comes back to what the brand's goals are in a certain scenario. I'm a big believer in that, like, if it's a really strong piece of emotional storytelling, ultimately it's going to find an appropriate place to live.
Right.
But it's tough for a brand to get sign off with just that kind of conviction, right? So you do have to kind of work closely with them and their partners to at least get a sense of like what the plan is from a distribution standpoint. But yeah, it continues to be one of the challenges that we all face in this kind of brand entertainment world, which is like being able to secure distribution before the content is actually completed. But we're getting there, and I think as more of these amazing case studies like 5B, The Cost of Winning with Gillette, many others kind of come to fruition, it makes everyone's life easier, because you can point to these industry-wide examples of when this really strong storytelling has resulted in very far-reaching distribution.
Right. And to your point about the business goals, I would assume that if you're looking at the business objectives across the buyer's journey, at the top of the funnel, business goals as awareness, much more aligned towards long form, distribution to streamers, versus if you're looking for ROI or kind of more transactional results. Short form could serve you better, because it's much more, you can push people to, e-commerce, storefront, whatever, you're looking for it to achieve.
Yeah. I think where long form storytelling plays best is certainly like the middle of the funnel, right? Like a long form storytelling is going to change perception, consumer perception, brand rating, brand consideration, purchase intent. That being said, with the Cornetto example, right? And that was the biggest thing that they did. And it was very clear. There was double-digit sales growth for Cornetto in the Philippines after the release of that movie and that campaign.
Right.
So we were able to tie it all back together. Frankly, the agency did. But it can move those metrics. It's
traditionally assigned to more awareness play.
It's as much of an art as it is a science to it's never going to be like you're running a direct ad on a social network and be able to draw the clear line to ROI, because you have view of the whole consumer journey and are able to attribute a transaction. Of course not, but there are many cases where we're able to show that this drove real business impact.
I see. And when you actually work with a brand on a branded entertainment project, I assume this is typically part of a larger campaign that they are pushing out. And are you strictly focusing on the film entertainment result, or there are other activation within the Wattpad platform, like community contests, integration, other stuff?
Yeah, so often the conversations start around more of our standard products. So, at the end of the day, we have a very hyper engaged audience that spends, on average 60 minutes per day on the platform when they log on. And so a lot of our partners just want to engage with that audience through more traditional means, which may just be video or display advertising on the platform, which we do with a lot of partners, or they might want to take it one step further and engage with them just on platform through things like writing contests.
Got it.
Branded writing contests are really one of our core kind of content products. We basically put up a prompt, invite the community to write short stories around that prompt. So it may be like, I think you've seen some of these case studies, but writing stories around the single-use plastic issue in partnership with National Geographic, where we took the top stories and actually produced an ebook together.
Right.
Writing stories, writing a high school romance story in partnership with Netflix and The Kissing Booth, to writing stories featuring strong LGBT plus characters in sponsorship of Pride Month and Ben & Jerry's and everything in between. So we do a lot of really fun activations, and the beauty is that because we are like a narrative based platform and community, is that you can have like a lot of fun with that.
For sure.
So we've been very fortunate to have like really innovative brand partners come on board and run campaigns like those that I had mentioned.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the point that you're really in a fortunate situation where your audience is working also, pre-creation as a validation feedback that it's actually great content to surface to the top, but also as, post-production for the activation. So you kind of win on both sides of the journey.
Exactly. Well, what's exciting is that like when we've gotten to some of these conversations, which one I can't speak to just yet, but we have a partner that like originally ran a larger contest with us.
Right.
And then we looked at the content that came out of it, the stories that came out of it, and then that allowed us to have a follow-on conversation around let's produce a short film together. The IP that's come out of this contest is really great. We don't want this to be like a single one and done campaign. This should be a larger multi-phase program. And so often the conversation, that's just that the contest is just stage one. And we start talking about what more can we do with all of this fantastic, all these fantastic stories that have been created. And then the conversation naturally evolves from there.
Yeah, and you can extend it to influencers and a variety of other things that you can actually offshoots. You mentioned earlier about the comprehensiveness of your data analytics, and I want to touch on it a little bit. So you mentioned earlier that typically you get two flavor of business goals, those awareness, drive awareness with a long form most likely, but then you have some ROI driven objectives that are more transactional in nature that could go either way, short or long form. How do you, as part of the process working with brands, at the end of a campaign, what type of success metrics do you provide them?
Yeah, so generally when we're doing a larger program, like soup to nuts from media and writing contest on the platform all the way to short film, there's a variety of metrics that we look at and data we look at. Of course, we look at larger impression data, like just what has the overall kind of reach of the program been. Media metrics are still very important to us and our brand partners. Then we often also look at engagement metrics. So how many people created stories, how many people read those stories, what was the overall time spent with the overall program. Then once we, at that point, actually, we often do, third-party studies, right, to validate that.
I see.
A larger program on the platform that involved influencers, a contest, paid media, maybe social promotion through our owned and operated. All of that in combination, what did that do from a lift or not a lift from a brand consideration, brand rating, purchase intent standpoint? Lastly, when we're producing video content, I mean, we're of course looking at total views of the video and potentially like how much earned media it generated, things like that. Right.
So it's kind of the full, umbrella from the first impression and
how much we're going deep on those, again, is largely driven by the partner. Knowing what their KPIs are is where we'll focus our time and energy.
Got it. And when you work with a brand and producing this creative content, because as you mentioned, it's a UGC platform. And I'm kind of imagining your team working almost like T Brand Studio or Get Creative on USA Today Network. They're basically working on brands to create great content and put it on their network. You're doing the same with your team. But I'm kind of wondering, thinking out loud, if the difference in your case is that the creators are actually users. So is your creative studio comprised of, obviously Wattpad people, but when you're working for, I don't know, let's say Disney, and you want to kind of, you just identify this great story that's going to work well. So this creator is actually becoming part of your creative team, or how does it work? Like the boundary between UGC and that you have like a professional studio?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So all of the projects that come out of our studio, are based off of stories and the writers on the platform. So our studio has one-to-one relationships with all of our top writers, which we call our Wattpad stars. So our Wattpad stars are essentially our influencer network These are our biggest writers that have hundreds of thousands of followers in many instances, and have really figured out how to write stories in this social mobile ecosystem involving crowd and engagement and community engagement, and they've really figured all of that out. And so most of the projects we do are involving these top writers. Certainly every brand project we do, and there's constantly new writers that are entering the program, because there's someone absolutely on the platform right now that we haven't discovered that's probably writing something really fantastic that's going to that's going to do quite well. And that's where the data comes in, because the studios team is constantly looking at the data around what stories are gaining in popularity, what stories are being highly engaged with on the platform, and then they're looking to talk to these writers and begin a one-to-one relationship with them if they don't already have one.
I see. And from your experience working with these stars, do you get the sense that they are 100% dedicated to Wattpad platform, or they have other outside engagements like their own website when they're doing, and other business related to their writing?
Yeah, so I mean, it's often pretty varied, right? Some of them are working across other platforms. Some of them have done personal branding. I mean, a lot of these writers, I mean, they understand the need for self-promotion, right? Like that's the world we live in now in terms of a social ecosystem, right? So the most important thing is that they're truly investing time and energy into their community on Wattpad, right? Particularly when I hear of this new writers joining, whether or not they're in my network or otherwise, and it can't be like a set it and forget it model, right? Like when you write on Wattpad, you need to be investing in your audience, you need to be investing in the community. That's how you build engagement.
Exactly.
Because we truly are, a social network.
I see. Got it. Cool. So what exciting next chapter are you working on for branded entertainment for Wattpad?
Yeah, there's a few things in the mix that we can't speak to in too much detail, but certainly a handful of short film projects that are coming up that hopefully we can announce in the coming months, as well as a longer form series that a brand partner is hopefully going to get involved in. So unfortunately, I wish I could provide details, but they'll be hopefully released soon, and we can share it with your audience once it goes public. But a handful of larger projects that we're looking to wrap up by the end of the year and do some fun announcements. So definitely a lot more to come from the Brand Originals side of the business. And yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, right, just overall looking to do more fun, engaging work with some of the biggest brands in the world, and particularly having conversations with them around the content on Wattpad that really aligns quite well with a lot of kind of social purpose and purpose-driven advertisers. What we realized on Wattpad is we're one of, we're extremely safe, positive, and inclusive platform where anyone can feel safe building and writing their story and building an audience, and that's something we're super proud of, and that's what makes us like a mission-driven company. And so, when we have stories like Saving Everest or stories like I'm a Gay Wizard, I mean, those are stories we're excited to share about to the world, share with partners, talk about with folks in Hollywood. So there's an endless amount of similar content on the platform that really tackles important kind of topics and covers off the entire world, right? Essentially. And that's what excites us, and that's what excites the team when we're talking to our partners. So a lot more to come on that front as well.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious because you've gained so much deep expertise in working with brands and creating original IP with these top stars that you basically provide an amazing creative environment to thrive on. Have you any thoughts, now another trend in the brand entertainment is kind of start your own streaming service, like, Salesforce Plus, or the other direction is just creating your own cable channel with the original content, because, it's one thing to sell it to the streamers, but over time you become so well-versed, you become the streamer yourself.
Yeah, you're onto something there. So just keep tabs on Wattpad. But I mean, we we recognize the power of the amount of IP that's on the platform, the power of our data.
Yeah.
We were recently acquired by Naver, and so we have the other kind of entertainment focused company in the Naver umbrella is Webtoon. So Webtoon and Wattpad combined their studios, so we have even more access to original IP than we've ever had before. So can't really comment on whether or not we'll have our own streamer, but certainly you're going to see even more adaptations come from the platform, and even more brand funded projects come from the platform into 2022 and beyond.
Well, that's exciting. So kind of to wrap it up for, my audience, marketer, brand folks that are really on the fence or maybe about to decide to get into brand entertainment, what would you give them, like your top 3 tips that they need to watch for?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get into partnerships or more broadly kind of branded entertainment, I think generally just staying on top of the industry and what's going on. So that's everything from just staying on top of the ad trades, from Ad Week, Ad Age to DigiDay, and just know what's going on.
Right.
It's a fast moving space, and knowing the big projects that are coming down the pipe is number one. The folks that are doing like true interesting things in the brand storytelling space it's a smaller community than you'd think. So network, right?
Yep.
Most people are probably 1 or 2 degrees of separation away.
Yep.
And then these still can be a bit nebulous terms. So really understanding what like part of branded entertainment it is that like speaks to you, and what part of the value chain you want to partake in, I think is an important conversation. Because like the partnership side and the BD side of it is just it's the tip of the spear, right? There's everything that goes on downstream, from development to production to post-production, distribution, etc. So there's many places to play in the ecosystem with folks with a variety of skill sets.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the way I'm kind of envisioning in my mind, it's like you have the visual storytelling that we've started with, which is kind of the full umbrella. And then you kind of branch out to branded content that gives you more specific formats that you can integrate your brand. And then, within this realm, you have the brand partnerships that, again, can give you more a variety of activations. And then the brand entertainment is just an offshoot that just focus on filmed content. So it's kind of just because marketers tend to kind of throw a lot of terminology. This is why they're experts, so confusing everybody.
Exactly.
So it's important to make the difference. All right, great. So thank you so much. And how can people actually reach out to you if they have any questions?
Yeah, so if you want more information on Wattpad brand partnerships, you can go to brands.wattpad.com. Tons of information on the projects I mentioned today. If folks want to get a hold of me, Chris@wattpad.com, very easy. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, C Stefanik. All those channels I easily contactable. So reach out if any of this sounded interesting, or folks want to chat about Wattpad or branded entertainment at large. Always happy to have a chat.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris. I had so much fun, learning and kind of going through the journey of how you guys build this powerhouse of branded partnerships, and especially the brand entertainment piece. It's really fascinating work, and it's great to see that people are thriving in this space and really kind of waving the gospel of visual storytelling in a way that, you got to communicate differently these days. Those days of just interruption marketing there's some place to kind of remind people, but, if you really want to move people emotionally, you want to go with the deeper content. So thank you so much. I had a great time. And for all of you listening and watching, we'll see you in the next episode of the Visual Storytelling Today podcast. Thank you.